So welcome everybody. I'd like to officially welcome you to the first of what we hope to be many events under the banner of the Digital Media Disruption Lecture Series, which is being brought to you by the Graduate School of Business here at Fordham University, in alliance with the Media and Entertainment Alliance, which is the group of students involved in the Media and Entertainment group here at the university. My name is Athan Stephanopoulos. I am the CEO and founder of GorillaSpot Media here in New York City. We are a digital media organization. We build video-based applications for media and entertainment companies. And I'm also an adjunct professor here at the Media and Communications Department of the Graduate School of Business and the chair of the Digital Media Disruption Lecture Series. So just to kind of set the stage a little bit before I introduce the panel and get into the conversation for tonight, a couple things in terms of you have some flyers here in front of you that I want to call out. As you might see, we have another event actually as soon as next Wednesday, a week from tonight. We are going to be interviewing Rachel Howitt, who is the Chief Digital Officer of New York City. That event's going to be at the Times Center, which is at the New York Times building in the theater. It's an open event. We welcome you to join us, but you can get the information on the flyer in terms of how to get tickets to that. So you're all invited to that. And there's also some handouts that have been given to us. Some of them were written by our panelists here today, and some are complementary materials that are in relationship to the topic tonight. So with that, I'm going to introduce our panel, who are here to talk about, as I mentioned, the very primary efforts of the lecture series is to talk about the impact that digital media is having across various industries and the disruption that's currently occurring. And so our first event today is to be able to discuss the impact and the crossroads of that digital impact on the nonprofit world. So our panel here today, first we have Don Undeen. Yes. And Don is the manager of the Media Lab. And so what we've decided to do is to give some context in terms of, he's the manager of the Media Lab at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We have a short little video that gives a little context of what he does on a day-to-day basis, and then we'll continue on and get a chance to ask some hopefully enlightening questions.
We're here at the Met for a very special art hackathon. Over 24 members of our community have flown into town and are going to be working with us to 3D capture works of art from the permanent collection of the Met and then create new work from the results.
My goal in this was simply to see what would happen if we put a bunch of really great artists in the museum with our collection and this technology.
It seems like a really natural thing that should happen with all the technology that's available, but also something that a lot of museums are probably really hesitant about. And so to hear that the Met was going to go through with it and MakerBot was going to sort of be at the forefront of this, I thought that was a really great pairing.
The technology is evolving so quickly. You get a sense that that's kind of going to be like a tornado of innovation that's coming. So how do you reconcile what to do with these types of tools?
I was invited to be a part of the project with Micah. I thought to myself, this is an excellent opportunity for me finally to incorporate the MakerBot into my work, because I use kind of archaeological items and kind of fuse them together and make these different sculptural looking scenes. And so I thought this would be perfect.
It's not necessarily just for educating the public about how MakerBots work or even how 3D scanning works. It's to allow people who wouldn't necessarily stare at one piece of art for more than 30 seconds to really interrogate and get to know all of these forms and then make something in response to that.
So here's something very fascinating where you're seeing technology come into the museum space in a very innovative way, which we'll talk about shortly. Next we have Susie Gooch, who is the Director of Websites at the Metropolitan Opera. So I'll try to be qualify here throughout the night when we refer to the Met, or the Met Museum or the Met Opera. She's been with them since 1996 and has been leading most of their digital and technology initiatives. So we'll take a little short video of some of the things that she's involved with. So again, another example of trying to bring new technologies and what we see today into the space of the arts. And finally, we have one of our own, Dr. Bill Baker, who is a professor here at Fordham, but he's got a long list. He is also a professor at IESE Business School, which is based in Barcelona, Spain. And also, I think a bit interesting claim to fame is he teaches the only business class at Juilliard, which we'll talk about. But Dr. Baker has been a pioneer of public television, but also a continuous student, shall I say, of the impact that technology is having in the area of journalism, in the area of traditional television as well. There's a little work that he's been working on, and we're going to catch a quick glimpse from a video that he's been involved in producing.
And the internet is rapidly changing how we value and consume information.
Ensuring a robust and open internet is the best thing we can do to promote innovation and investment. And while there are some who see every policy decision as either pro-business or pro-consumer, I reject that approach. It's not the right way to see technology's role in America. An open internet will benefit both consumers and businesses.
The variety of input assures the marketplace of ideas.
If we can't innovate and generate new ways to communicate and new business models to pay for that information so that very tough reporting can be rewarded, then I think that's more troubling. It's all changing every day.
Basically, it means getting people to pay for content online.
48% of folks in the U.S. would pay for online news content.
How are these changes affecting our democracy? What's the future of news?
You can grab different beats, market them to people who are passionate about that issue. That'll pay for the journalism.
The owners of the copyrighted works assign the rights to police those works and collect royalties. This is our fee. Pay it or be sued.
Newspapers and web journalism need new business models and, more important, new ways of thinking about the value of information.
So hopefully we have a quick chance to kind of set the stage here and really now jump into it. So I'm going to begin actually with you, Dr. Baker. In many ways, I think it's fitting, given your involvement and interest in the impact that digital is having, particularly in journalism and in news. And we just had a very large news event last night. From your vantage point, how are you seeing kind of digital and social technologies changing the way that news and journalism occurs today in terms of consumption and in terms of creation?
Well, I mean, that's the question, and it's also has a complicated answer, unfortunately. First, we all know that the digital world has highly fragmented the legacy journalism world, the legacy media world in general. So the digital world has been a source of fragmentation. Some of that's good, some of that's bad. The New York Times, for example, has more people looking at it every day than they've ever had. Maybe they have 30 to 40 million viewers a day online, where the most they ever circulated, I think, was 3 or 4 million newspapers a day. The big problem is with legacy journalism and with legacy media in general. The people that have actually made this original material, in the case of, say, the recording industry that recorded the original records and CDs and paid the artists for that, and in the case of journalism, people who go out and feet on the street reporters who spend half a year searching out a story and digging and finding answers and uncovering new material. The problem is the digital world has not yet come up with a model that pays those people. So most all of the content we see, be it entertainment, be it journalism, in the digital world is really being paid for by the old traditional legacy media world. And I just wrote an article in The Nation magazine putting a lot of, mentioning the fact that Google who does a terrific job of getting the word out. I mean, there's no better search engine in the world than Google, but yet, and they get a lot of this news information out, and they make money from it through various means, sometimes selling ads, sometimes selling other kinds of information about the people consuming these media. They make money, but they don't pay the original sources, like the New York Times or like the local paper or anybody else. And in the performing arts world, the world that I'm spending a lot of time in over at Juilliard, is there was just recently an article talking about these streaming audio services now that are so popular, Pandora and those kinds of things. And a lot of these artists, you know, is kind of like, oh, well, now finally you don't have to deal with Sony Records. You can become your own recording company, put yourself on the web and go out and stream your music or whatever it is, make a fortune. Well, all that's true except the last part of it, making the fortune. It hasn't seemed to happen. There are examples of people who've had artists who have recorded, had their music uploaded, downloaded 1.5 million times and made, you know, $6,000. Well, you know, this is a hobby. It's not a profession at this point. So the real problem has been figuring out, I mean, there are many problems, but the biggest one, the one that I've been most concerned about in the case of journalism, in the case of the performing arts, is how can we monetize this digital world in a meaningful way that you can have paid professionals operating, so that you could have performers who aren't performing as a hobby, who are doing it as a living, getting paid through these sources, that you can have journalists who are not just citizen journalists, but are professional journalists capable of spending time and energy to really dig for stories. So it's a very significant transitional time, one of great concern, and particularly in the case of journalism, if we have a country, I mean, all this will probably get worked out in 20 or 30 years, but if we don't have meaningful journalism for 20 or 30 years, you're going to wind up with not much of a democracy.
And Susie, actually kind of picking up what Bill said in terms of the performing arts. So you're at the Met Opera. How have you seen over the past 10, 15 years this transition from traditional media to digital media kind of disrupting the landscape for the opera?
Well, that is the big question. The two major products that we have launched are Live in HD, which, for example, this current opera season, during 12 Saturday matinees, you can go to any one of 1,900 theaters around the world in 64 different countries, pay for a $20 movie ticket, and see a live broadcast of what's happening on the stage, in addition to intermission features that we produce specifically for Live in HD. So that has greatly expanded our audience and has been incredibly successful. Another product that we launched 4 years ago is Met Opera On Demand, which is on our website. It's behind a paywall, and we also have an iPad app for it as of last year. So for $15 a month, you can watch and or listen. Some are audio, some are standard def, some are HD quality videos, over 400 operas, as many times as you want. You can hook it up to your sound system and have an amazing experience at home. So we've launched those two products in the last 6 years to take advantage of the increased fragmentation in people's consumption habits, and hoping to do more of it. But
let me ask you, just to pick up on that real fast too, because Don and I were talking beforehand, where do the drivers of that come from? Because you see a lot of times, traditionally speaking, there's resistance to adopt new technologies, particularly in areas where you probably have an older demographic who are considered the laggards in terms of adoption. So where's the driving force coming out of the opera in terms of some of these initiatives?
From Peter Gelb, the head of the organization. He came in wanting to bring us up to date technologically, and he wanted to push as much as possible, and Live in HD was his concept. And the Met Opera On Demand came 2 years later, 2 years after he took over. So it's us pushing it on our public, basically, and hoping for the best. And it's certainly working in Live in HD, and it's working just slightly more slowly on Met Opera On Demand.
We'll jump back into that, but I'm going to come to Don real fast, too. Again, just give us your perspective, too, from your vantage point at the museum. And I want to ask you more about the hackathon that you did. But first, how do you see kind of this convergence of digital technologies affecting the relationship with your visitors?
Yeah. Well, I think what's most interesting to me, and it's probably a bit different from a performance-oriented organization, is that a museum stands as this house full of amazing stuff that really sort of belongs to the world. And I think one of the things that's happening with all these great new technologies right now is people are getting more involved in creating their own content. Right? People are uploading videos of themselves to YouTube. They're crafting, or you might even say curating, their own collections of images on sites like Pinterest or Flickr, or they're so much more involved in this medium that's not a one-way medium like a broadcast at all. It's very much two-way. So the museum is really, we're trying to figure out how can we make ourselves a part of that conversation. So a lot of the times it's not about us, broadcasting yet another very interesting piece of curatorial content or art information or performances of our own that we also stream, but making all of our content sort of available for people to use and reuse and respond to, because the art's sort of a part of our culture.
And how do you see the art community responding to that? Because again, you think about the rules have changed today.
Yeah.
And now everybody's a content creator, right?
Right.
And more often than not, traditional artists, whether it's a musician, a performer, an artist, tend to see themselves above everybody else, and now everybody can create their own sense of content and share it quickly. How does the art community kind of react to that?
Well, I don't know how the capital A art community reacts to that. I know that amongst like the arts tech community, the people to which we're reaching out to, because these are people, they aren't just, oh, everybody's an artist, but these are amazing creative technologists in their own right, creating really amazing work, but it's built around sort of the sociality and the mode of production of technology. Right, so people for this hackathon we had 30 artists come from around the world to participate for food.
Give some context too about the relationship.
Tell us about that machine and what came out of it.
So I apologize I didn't bring any prints with me because I didn't stop by the office today. But and actually President Obama gave a shout out to 3D printing in his State of the Union last night, which I thought was really interesting. Basically, MakerBot makes what's called a fused deposition printer. And it's essentially, it squeezes out a tiny thread of plastic on a head that can move it can move side to side and up and down. And by adding successive layers of plastic, it builds up these three-dimensional models of whatever you can design within like certain restrictions of the laws of physics. So you can, and so that's great. You can make things that you can design. Well, because these printers exist and they're cheap enough that you can own one, you can get one for $500 if you're not afraid to put it together yourself. The next step is the software to actually build those models is getting easier. There's tools like Google SketchUp. There's online programs you can go and build three-dimensional models yourself with very little experience. But those are coming about because the printers exist, and they say, oh, anybody wants this. People want to tinker. Those same companies are making oftentimes free software that make it easy for a person at home to make their own models. And now the third piece of the tech that really makes it amazing and really makes this great for art museums, and is the reason that we had the hackathon, is there's what they call photogrammetry software. Right, photogrammetry is where you can take a group of pictures of the same object. Basically, I could take a regular camera, walk up to a marble sculpture and take pictures from all sides, load it into this photogrammetry software, and we'll turn those pictures into a three-dimensional model that I can then print. Or I can modify it and then print. Or I can combine it with other models and print. Or I can combine it with other models and build my own museum in three-dimensional space that I could walk through and share online with my friends. So we've got a situation where just about anybody with a camera can go into a museum and take an object home and make something new with it.
So on all of these tools, I mean, I can do it, and I'm not a 3D artist.
Let me ask this question to you, but it's really meant for the rest of you, and I would love to hear. Oftentimes you hear when it comes to adopting new technologies, what's the value? Why do it? Why open this up to allow people to come in? What benefit does the museum get? What benefit does the opera get in engaging in? And let's even within public television. What's the return of our investment in these efforts?
Well, let's put it this way. I don't think you necessarily lead in this area. I don't think you make an investment in this area because you're investing in the new technology. I think you're investing in the new technology because if you don't, you'll get run over. You know, so I think it's one of those situations where you don't have a chance. You can't be a legacy operator for the rest of your life because you're not going to exist. You'll be a historic wounded. So that's the reason. There are in niche projects, digital so-called disruptive media are particularly effective. I can see how it could be effective in say opera, which has a very small niche in the performing arts world, about 2%, something like that. So people will seek out, people who care about that subject will seek it out. And I think digital, the so-called disruptive media have been very effective for those of us who are in public media. Public media is also not a niche as small as opera, but it's not the boxcar mass media, say as CBS or something. So we could have programs and things where people would seek out specific kinds of activities that we did, and our websites became some of the biggest. Matter of fact, in the early years, public television's website I think was the biggest website out there. There wasn't anything bigger for many years because the people that watch public television were early adopters. They liked what was available. The big worry is again the traditional broad scope performing arts, the traditional broad gauge journalism. There are going to be people that are using that everybody now is using this so-called disruptive media, and again we come back to the same worry: how do you transfer paying journalists in the newsroom or paying performers into that world? People are using their material in that world, but so far there hasn't been a very good way to pay them.
Susie?
And we feel the world of opera has been shrinking, so these efforts are there to expand the audience as much as possible by providing different ways of consuming it. So we feel it's integral to keeping opera alive and the performing arts alive.
And in terms of the example you gave with Live HD, what are the promotional efforts to drive somebody who lives on the West Coast or would never have a chance to come and see live opera to realize that they can capitalize on these things you're bringing to them today?
Well, we have our own promotional efforts through our own advertising, but we also partner with NCM and Fathom, the actual distributors, and the movie theaters. So they do their own promotion in addition to ours. So it's a combination effort. We have an education department that works a lot with schools all over the U.S., and they provide educational materials to the school teachers in advance of their students being able to see a production. So it's a multi-fingered promotional effort.
How do the other opera companies feel about it?
They mainly are not so happy because people are spending their money to come to our broadcasts in some cases instead of supporting their local opera companies. So it's a mixed bag in cities that have their own opera companies. But on the other hand, you could say anything that's good for any opera company is helpful to all the companies. So it's debatable.
And coming back to your direct oversight in terms of the website and elsewhere, what looking forward, what role does the site itself have? We talked a little bit the other day. I mean, clearly one of the most disruptive tools today is a mobile phone. The fact that the ubiquity of the phone and everybody's connected. How does the extension from web to mobile play for somebody like you in your position?
It's a challenge. You know, we have very limited budgets, very limited staff, and our current website is not particularly mobile friendly. It works well on an iPad, but not on a smartphone. We have a mobile site that is, I will admit, pathetic and should be omitted, should be nuked. But until I can make the current website mobile friendly, which I can do given a bit more time and a little bit more money, I want to keep it there because you can actually buy tickets on your smartphone. So yes, the challenge of extending your reach to everyone's smartphone is a huge challenge and perfectly feasible. It's just a question of budget and staff.
And Don, I mean, to me, the museum is it's the mobility of a person walking around the museum and having this fun with them. What's the future of mobile for something like the Met?
That's a good question. We're in the middle of sort of redoing our mobile app now, taking that development in-house so we can really start to iterate quickly on new advances in our mobile technology. We've done mobile games, these sort of scavenger hunt type of experiences where you have you might call it an augmented reality experience where you're interacting with sort of hidden information in the art, and there's sort of games that you can play that cause you to sort of look more closely at the objects, things like that. I really don't know. I mean, I don't know what's going to be next. I mean, we always want to be able to give more information to the visitor. We want to give them more context to examine the art through. Bringing in art from other museums virtually into the space where you're at is going to be really important, because the fact that our collection is our collection is sort of an accident of history in terms of there's great art in other museums that would fit really well, and we can't always exchange these things. So the virtual realm can help us to sort of overcome these limitations of time and space.
And Bill, I'll bring mobile into play, at least in terms of public television. Your thoughts on how mobile has, I mean, we see today that mobile and the power of social on top of mobile, right? With Twitter being very much that second screen experience. And you watch the State of the Union and you see hashtags and handles just about everywhere. What role or what way can public television capitalize on this new second screen experience?
Well, the answer is I don't fully know. You know, I mean, the problem is there's just so much, and also it is obvious anybody in the media world is trying to play heavily on all platforms. I mean, that's really what the game is. So if you're an American broadcaster, public or commercial, you're not just a broadcaster. You're on Twitter, you're online, you're on every conceivable platform that you can come up with. The beauty of being in the video world is that a lot of these platforms are very translatable one to the other. When you start using things like Twitter and Facebook and some of the other kinds of second screens, third screens, use those principally as promotional tools, or use those as social tools. It's been very effective on programs like Downton Abbey, where you get people zapping one another and commenting and talking. But again, I don't know. I don't know about all that. I see all of the data. The data shows that people watching television, and TV is still the elephant in the room. It's still the biggest thing that there is as far as usage goes. So people are watching television, but they're also something like 65% of those people are also online at the same time on their tablets or on their smartphones. So you have all this stuff happening at one time. So people are multitasking. Now, I've been multitasking all my life because I've been in the TV business so long. So I always had 5 television sets in front of me, and one of the reasons why people have said that I'm not so smart is that reason. I think there's just been, all the studies show that you get too much of this stuff, and you can't, that you really aren't as effective watching 5 televisions at one time. You're better off watching one. And it's the same, I think, with television programs. You know, being on Twitter and Facebook and online and having a television on. I'm not sure what anybody's getting out of any of this stuff, other than messing up your time. So I'm actually thinking of going back to radio. It seems like the right place to be.
Hey, then I'd like to retract my answer.
Yeah, please.
If I could, I'd do a much more thoughtful answer. I'd say that I think the future of mobile for institutions like the Met is less to do with us building our own fancy apps that are impressive and more about participating in those conversations that are happening on all these other platforms that already exist, as well as just making our information available for reinterpretation by people who want to build their own digital apps or reinterpretations of our collection.
I think that's the right answer.
Yeah.
I think that's
good.
The right
Better than me.
Well, no, and I think you bring up a good point, because traditionally over the past few years you've seen across various industries this resistance to, there's this walled garden approach of we want to build these experiences around our environment and control the whole thing.
Right.
And now you're starting to see these tools and technologies coming out that's disrupting that behavior to say, well, maybe we need to tie into open APIs and let people share Instagram photos from the museum.
Right. If we don't share our data, people are going to scrape our site anyways. I mean, we might as well do it. We might as well do it well.
And this is what I'm interested in is what level of resistance or support are you getting within the Met to see that, I know you're on the record somewhere because we're streaming live here.
Lots of support from all of my fabulous colleagues. I mean, that's actually true, but...
No, but that's, I mean, a lot of times I joke, but, I teach here at the business school, and more often than not, I'll have a student usually say to me, I got pulled into a meeting, and, my boss will ask, who's the youngest person in the room? And that person will raise their hand. They say, okay, you're going to lead our social strategy. There's this inherent sense of we don't understand digital or social, therefore give it to. What level of acceptance of we don't know but we need to do something exists within kind of the performing arts or the world of nonprofits?
Well, I'll say, if I may, the concern, right, with an institution like the Met is the notion of what we call curatorial authority, right? This idea that we know a lot, and it's true, we know a lot about art. Particularly we know a lot about our art and our collection. We arrange our art in a certain way on the walls because it means something, and understanding that meaning, it's important for us to sort of convey that to our visitors. However, that's just one story, or many stories, but it's a subset of all of the stories that could possibly be told. Some of those other stories would be great and fabulous stories for other people to tell. Some stories that might be told about our collection are probably not something we might be very happy about being told. They might not be true, they might be true but uncomfortable. So if there's concerns in the institution about that, it's when you let open those floodgates and say, here's all of our information, here's all of our digital files, what gets uncovered in that? Because we didn't start our museum thinking that necessarily all of this was going to be out there free for anyone to reinterpret however they like. So I'm not saying that there's skeletons in the closet. I mean, it's not a big conspiracy, but there's just this notion that the curators are realizing that they don't have the same control over the message or the story anymore that they might have had 50 or 100 years ago.
Susie,
and a somewhat related topic, but not quite an answer to your question, is the subject in our organization of unions, because we're a very unionized organization, and all of the performers or anybody who takes part in producing the product who is unionized has a right to say what that material can be used for. So we have had to do a lot of negotiating, and again, led by Peter Gelb, to get some more flexibility with our unions in terms of what can be streamed, what can't be streamed, how much can be streamed, how are people compensated. So a lot of background work has to take place before we can do any of that.
Let me ask you
By the way, what you just said was really important, particularly in a mature organization like that. And it also can't be said enough what wonderful vision Peter had in pulling all this off, negotiating, especially in this environment, at the top performing organization in the world, with with unions and getting them to realize that they needed to do something differently was quite amazing that all that could happen. And I think also we have to say to the unions, they were smart to understand that they had to do something. So it all really worked out, but it was really Peter's vision as an impresario, really, that made this happen, and maybe in some ways saved opera in the world.
We hope so, and it's still a bit of a work in progress.
Yeah, right.
But the door has been opened, and everyone seems to understand that there's no future for something like opera until everyone understands the new technologies and their importance.
To build off that, and you make a great point, Bill, because I see that a lot in the film industry too, that the deals that were negotiated 15 years ago are very different than today, and understanding how are we going to sell this digitally that we couldn't understand 15 years ago. But kind of want to take it a little differently, and again, one more to you, Susie, in terms of you actually have performers. And you see this again, I think, a lot in sports, where athletes are now using these tools, Facebook and Twitter. They're talking about what they're doing, and they kind of represent the team that they play for at all times, yet they may not be on the field. Have you seen any of that yet in terms of your performers starting to use these tools in a way that the Met wants to come in and kind of guide some of their social conversations?
Well, we don't have the right to tell them what to do with their social conversations, but a lot of artists do have their own websites. And because of what Google has done recently, because people are manipulating metadata and they're putting words in metadata that are not truly in their content, Google is now underplaying the importance of metadata, and they're reading the page, they're crawling the page to see what content is actually there. So what that means to an organization like us is if someone Googles Anna Netrebko, one of our biggest sopranos, you don't get to our site fast, because even though we have her name in all the metadata, Google's not following that. So we are having to we want to create artist pages purely so that the SEO is improved. And you get people who are searching for artists coming to our website instead of going to, we want them to go to Anna Netrebko's site as well, but also to our site. So you're seeing, you have to keep on top of Google because they change their algorithms literally daily. And you never know quite what's going to happen to the search engine results page. And you're finding yourself, literally scanning the news to figure out what you have to do differently for SEO on a frequent basis.
So that's SEO. How about the social? Is there a social strategy at all?
Well, not one that we dictate to the artists. We certainly do a lot with Twitter and Facebook in terms of just announcing on all of those platforms at the same time when something's happening, or we just are posting new Parsifal videos for the production that's opening this Friday. We posted videos after the Monday dress rehearsal. So the social's simply another extension of everything that we do now in marketing and promotion.
Transition a little bit. One thing that fascinates me in terms of the nonprofit world, you're driven by the contributions of your community. And you see nowadays too the use of technologies to raise capital, crowdsourcing in terms of funding, whether it be Kickstarter. Have you seen, or are you looking at any kind of initiatives in which you can use tools, digital tools, to help enhance the bottom dollar for the Met?
We are just beginning to do that. We just opened up a gated content area for members at the $150 level and above, where they can listen to we've had 82 years of radio broadcasts on Saturday afternoons, so a very old technology, very popular technology. But after that live broadcast on Saturdays, you can't listen to it again. So we're now letting members at the $150 level and above listen to it in a special gated area, and we are recording Met Talks, which are panels about new productions, and we're putting those recordings of Met Talks into the gated area as well. So it's a baby step we've just taken. We're not quite sure how successful it is yet, but we certainly plan to build on it.
Anybody have any money?
What's tricky though is you can't take away things that you've been giving for free, and that goes back to what you're saying, Bill. Once you start giving news away for free, how do you take it back and put it behind a paywall?
That's the real problem.
It is.
And it's just historically wound up being this way in America and in other parts of the world, where we started giving stuff away, and now now that the genie's out of the box, what are you going to do? I'd like to comment on fundraising, since one of our friends here said that I relieved him of a lot of his money, and I thank you for that. And it was well spent, believe me. But for at least public media, I'd say online, while very effective and quite, as I said earlier, quite broad. I mean, it is heavily used in public media. Some of the biggest sites on the web are public media sites. But fundraising has not been particularly effective on the web. And the only place that I know of that where the web has been used effectively for mass fundraising, for any kind of fundraising, that really returns, has been political for some reason. Political fundraising has been very, very effective on the web, but traditional non-for-profit institutional fundraising has not been particularly effective at all. All you do is really aggravate the heck out of people. We aggravate them anyway, but you aggravate them even more on the web. So I don't see the web at the moment, unless we figure out some other ways of using it, for fundraising to be a tool that you can really use meaningfully for fundraising. You can keep people updated, you can keep them involved. I'm not sure you can get much out of them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure what would happen if I tried to start a Kickstarter page for a Media Lab project. I don't know that our development department would like that. The Met has a great department for raising funds for all sorts of exhibitions and programs. We haven't quite figured out how to do that same sort of thing for digital media. Yeah, we had a great sponsor for the hackathon through MakerBot. Working with a relatively small vendor like that for really small stake sums it was still sort of a big deal putting that MakerBot name next to the Met. The Met's very careful about its brand in that sense. So in terms of new media, which I think involves new kinds of relationships with companies and new types of programs with different types of mechanisms for raising money that might be more effective. That's a lot slower for the institution to sort of change the way it thinks about how it has those kinds of relationships. And I don't know that it should. I'm not really sure.
I'm sure this is slightly off topic, and I'm sure a lot of you know what the Obama campaign did socially in this last election. Raised $690 million from their online efforts. And they had a team of about 35 people constantly testing subject lines.
Yeah.
The most successful one was Hey, H-E-Y, right? I mean, who would have thought? But because they were doing constant testing on the content and the subject lines and the segmentation of the lists, they were incredibly successful. And I think it'll be a while before not-for-profits can even begin to touch that kind of, I mean, it's a totally different product, so it
There's
doesn't.
an amazing
apples
video
and oranges.
online about those guys.
Right.
I can't remember how to get to it, but it really genius people working for that campaign.
Well, you bring up some of these. I offer to my social media class here at the school that talks about, it's a case study done on Obama's successful campaign starting in 2008 in terms of how successful they were in raising capital online and being able to empower a group of people, and this concept of testing and doing A/B testing. And oftentimes, I think many other industries can learn from the money that's been raised in the political arena, how you can raise money online, and then the shift that they did to mobile, particularly in the 2012 campaign. One kind of final thought here, and then I want to kind of get some final comments from you, and then open it up to see if there's any questions. Is Bill, you kind of said something about the genie's out of the bottle, and oftentimes I see it with having a 4-year-old daughter, right, who I look at as somebody who is a digital native rather than a digital immigrant. I joke she, grabbed a magazine once and was trying to swipe it. Yeah. Their understanding of what free means, right? Because they're growing up in a world where everything they get online is free. And so how, particularly in the nonprofit world, do you try to adapt to that reality that you either innovate or die?
Well, I mean, I think that's accurate. I mean, that's clearly what the Met Opera has done. I think it's probably less important at the Met Museum.
How about for public television?
But,
and I know it's a different beast.
By the way, I want to tell you a story. You have a 4-year-old daughter. I have a 4-year-old granddaughter. And my daughter reported to me, and of course my 4-year-old granddaughter is like your 4-year-old daughter, totally digital native, and she's on that iPad. You know, well, I mean they restrict it, but she's incredibly good on the iPad. And my daughter reported to me that that my granddaughter had made 3 $12 transactions. That she had a website, and I guess it said upgrade for $12, and she boom, you know. And there was a credit card stored in there. So, you know, so all of a sudden they're getting on their credit card all of these. Then I thought, wow, this is really scary. My 4-year-old granddaughter spending money on the web. I forgot what but I had to say that because I mean that's kind of scary and interesting all at the same time, but well, that's a real danger.
That sets the stage for my last question. Mm-hmm. You know, from all of your respective vantage points, mm-hmm. And it's a hard thing to do, but look 3-5 years out. Where are we? Where are you for the museum, for the opera, and you know, in the vantage point that you sit?
Well, I like to think that in 3 to 5 years, the Met Museum has got a physical public space for digital experimentation with our collection. We've got an online space for those same kinds of activities, and that we're inviting digital content makers, you know, people who like to make things, to come and reinterpret our collection using all of these amazing, I mean, who knows what kind of tools are going to be available, but I'm sure they're going to put more like amazing powers of creation in the hands of more people. And it's my hope and plan that the museum is playing a role in that conversation and making our content and our expertise available to people who want to use that for inspiration.
Susie?
I'm going to kind of chicken out. I think the rate of change is so fast that I can't even imagine what to hope for in 5 years. I mean, I just can't even, I don't think we know what's going to come around the corner in 6 months, 8 months.
Yeah, true.
So it's an exciting area to be in.
I'm going to kind of bring it back to you though on that one. Then in your respective, you know, role, how do you, if things are moving so quickly, how do you leverage any of it that's happening?
That's really hard. It's really hard from a budget standpoint because which platforms do you invest in? I mean, you have to find some way, some tool that allows you to project onto multiple platforms, if possible. Mm-hmm. Can't always do it, but for budget reasons alone, in a not-for-profit world, you can't afford to be platform specific. You've got to be agnostic, as agnostic as possible. So I'm looking at, I switched the site into a new content management system recently that has a mobile pack that will, once we do some more work, make it much more mobile friendly, and then I can nuke the mobile site, for example.
What about the idea of a mobile app?
We're looking, we've got an iPad app for the season brochure, we've got an iPad app for Met Opera On Demand. We intend to do more of that as budgets and staff allow. But you know, you can't, it's fun to dream of these projects, but you've got to keep the maintenance of them in mind because we all know of stuff that looks great upon launch, but if it's not updated frequently, it's no good. So you can't just think of what would be cool to do, you've got to say what would be cool and what can we maintain and keep exciting on an ongoing basis.
Bill?
Well, I think Susie said it really well, and it's hard to say it any better than that. I can tell you that one of the things that is happening that is a danger, especially for the big brand media of the kind that I've been involved with, is that we have all of these sub-brands, and you do too, and you have, in your case, you were talking about your artists and that kind of thing. Met Museum is a different kind of category. Yeah. But we're in some ways similar, and a real awakening to me, and I thought, boy, I'm glad I retired as president of public television, is that I went into another granddaughter's class, an older granddaughter, in Brooklyn. I went into her class to give a little lecture, And I walked into that class, and 10 years ago, if I would walk into an elementary school, it was like a superstar had walked in there. I mean, because everybody knew public TV, everybody knew Bill Baker, because they saw me begging for money. Now, the kids didn't even know, had never even heard of Channel 13.
Really?
Yeah, but they all knew our individual programs. That they would watch. They all knew Sesame Street. They all knew, they all knew Thomas and Friends. They knew all of our shows. They just didn't know the big brand. And I thought, ooh, that's good and that's bad. Because the more fragmented we get, the harder it is to keep a base of support for all of that. So that was it was a real eye opener for me, and I thought, Neil Shapiro, you got good luck. This is really tough stuff.
Well, no, I think it paints a colorful picture of the reality that exists today. What I'd like to do now is open it up. We have people here in the room. What questions do you have for our distinguished panel? Please.
Have you, and this sort of goes to everybody, have you done any analytics in terms of how much the newer media has cannibalized your old presentations? In terms of people coming to the museum versus browsing online or watching a movie theater?
Well, in the case of broadcast media, all of those media are heavily analyzed, commercial and public. So we have a very good idea of what's going on. And because we're able to, we have ratings, and we're able to track audiences. It's pretty, pretty nuanced stuff. Generally speaking, all of the main broadcast audiences are going down, but they're not going down like dropping over the cliff. As I say, there's still the preponderance of watching video is still television, be it broadcast or cable. What I'd call legacy traditional television, but there's more and more use of online. There's more and more use of mobile, but it's still pretty infinitesimal in the case of traditional video content.
And I'll answer for the Met Opera. We certainly do analytics, and we try to analyze those things, but there are so many variables that it's very difficult to draw meaningful conclusions, I think, other than we are expanding our audience. Yeah. But it's very difficult to say, are ticket buyers decreasing because of Live in HD? That's a very difficult question to answer.
Yeah, I mean, and the Met's still the #1 tourist destination in New York City, and our visitorship is going up, while at the same time we're increasing our online presence via all sorts of social channels, as well as revamping our website last year. So, I mean, it's our sense that our presence on all those channels just draws more people into the physical space, because our, the general working theory of having a museum is that nothing beats actually being there in front of a work of art, whether it's to cross it off your bucket list or because it's just really cool. So I like to say it's only increased the visibility.
Other questions? Please, we'll go in the back. Oh, come on.
In regards to your fundraising, with the use of smartphones and tablets, have you experimented with doing fundraising directly in that form of media instead of trying like traditional Facebook or Twitter to see if that captures the millennial or the Gen X generation, where they're more apt to donate through that format than doing the traditional snail mail?
The Met Opera has done some baby steps, but not much yet. Sorry.
No, and public television has done a lot of steps in online fundraising using traditional email, but has, to my knowledge, done nothing on with mobile devices.
And I don't
think mobile devices are particularly great for fundraising, to be honest. I think they're more. I think fundraising would be a real aggravation on your iPhone, but I don't know.
We don't solicit micro donations through cell phones. And that's generally pretty sensitive about. We already ask people for the suggested donation of $25 to come in the door. Hence, you don't have to pay it. but we have, we've done more work in promoting people getting memberships through all of our various social channels, and that's been very effective.
Wait a question.
I work at Percolate, a software company downtown, and we work with mostly Fortune 500 brands who are publishing content, and one of the things that we're seeing is that the most successful brands in the digital space are ones who are able to tie timely and relevant events in the world at large back to their own content creation. But this is also a challenge that a lot of brands face, and I'm curious to know, especially in the institutional and in the nonprofit world, if you find it challenging to talk about not just your own content or content that you're producing, but other things in the world that are maybe only peripherally related to your mediums.
It's not an issue for us. I mean, that's because of the nature of the public television. We're doing news. We're doing we're relating to the world. That's one of the big things that we do. So that works pretty well for us, and we try to relate ourselves to everything that's going on. That's been one of our great assets.
I'm trying to think of examples where we've done like Twitter or Facebook posts based on current events and tied them back to our institution. I know it's happened. We generally try to keep it more on the when we do that sort of thing. It's more on the whimsical and lighthearted level than dealing with like serious issues in the world. But we do it sometimes, yeah.
We do it if it's related. If there's a Wagner Society event or lecture series or other events about Philip Glass related that we can tie into a Philip Glass opera, we'll do that. But other than that, I think, would not be doing what you're talking about.
We do a lot of cat meme posts, actually. Some of people like cats, so.
The big meme of the day
right.
was Obama doing the fist bump, right? Axel.
Yeah, being a student at Fordham, referring to the case study you mentioned earlier about the Obama campaign, one of the success factors in there was the importance of the topic of digital in the campaign. So what's the priority of this topic in your organization?
You mean organizationally? It's embedded in the marketing department, if that's what you mean. Okay. It doesn't have its own department. We have a media department, and the more digital website related stuff is within the marketing department. So we don't have a new media department as such.
So the responsible person is reporting to, for example?
Marketing.
Okay.
At the museum, I mean, when our new director, Thomas Campbell, replaced Philippe de Montebello, who had been director of the museum for 35 years. As an example of how important he thinks digital is, he never mentions how many people walk in the door of the museum without also mentioning how many visits we get to our website. He restructured the entire IT, education, and design departments to support a digital media department, because the motto of the museum is sort of we're the museum to the world. It's an encyclopedic collection, and it's our goal to share our collection as widely as we possibly can afford. I mean, we have all of our out-of-print publications are now available for free downloads as PDFs from the website. And some really major moves to put massive amounts of content, 4,000 with pixel images of all of our objects can be downloaded from the site for free for non-commercial and educational uses. So yeah, it's very important. A lot of money and attention is being spent on that space.
Yes, please.
Right. I know nothing about fundraising, but I'd like to humbly make a suggestion for the benefit of both of your institutions. Since your brands are titularly synonymous as the Met and the Met, have you ever considered some sort of a joint fundraising campaign? Sort of a two for the price of one.
Oh yeah, it's time we met.
Especially considering that 95, I would dare say 95% of your patrons would be interested in his institution as well, needless to say.
We have done some joint events where things have been very related. I'm having trouble remembering what it was. It was a number of years ago, a couple of years ago. But we haven't yet done joint fundraising.
That's really
food for thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Well, first of all, I would comment, don't do it with the Mets, please.
Okay.
That's good.
Yankees?
Yankees, sure. I noticed that a lot of the conversation has been surrounding, I guess, adjusting to the disruptions that are happening. But if you could imagine stepping out of your roles in your institutions and suggesting a disruption to your organization that would make it stronger, what would it be?
Putting more, opening our data, opening all of our images free for all uses, removing all the copyrights on all the stuff that the Met claims copyright on. Don't tell anyone I said that. Is it on TV?
Except for the rest of the people watching on the internet.
I mean, that would be disruptive. Stepping outside of my role as a responsible member of the staff.
I'm having trouble coming up with a good answer. I mean, there are major issues. I don't have a. I'll get back to you on that. I don't have a good answer. It is.
And as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to get back to you too. But I would think it would be wonderful if we could stream everything we do. The problem is we can't. There are all kinds of legal and copyright union issues that just don't allow us to do that. And with the number of public television stations in America too, where all those things, it gets pretty complicated. So sorting all that out is a problem.
A couple final questions. We'll go here. Yeah, please.
Oh, the last two comments bring up a good point about user suggestions and how much does the audience inform your strategy, or do you even have a forum for them to provide input, and how seriously do you take them?
Well, for me, the sort of the hackathon has sort of guided me in this direction of creating a media lab that's highly directed by the desires of the people who want to participate in our activities. Basically, we're setting up sort of a meetup type group where creative technologists, the people who want to do stuff with our information, can come to the institution, get the access they need if we just can't provide it, anonymously, and do the projects that they want to do that help the museum learn about technology, and then we publish it and share it with the world in this sort of open way. So to me, it's very much about the museum being a platform for people who want to do stuff with our collection. And the more engaged a person wants to be, the more the museum should really reach out to meet them and help them accomplish those goals, because those are sort of like the power users of the museum that can really sort of elevate, the mission.
We listen to all comments coming in from all directions, and when it's appropriate and when we can, we respond, but you can't do what every single person wants. But Peter's added early curtains because of the huge response to people saying 8 o'clock is too late. If possible, we start at 7:30 now. So things like that certainly have changed because of the feedback from our public.
And in the case of public media and commercial media, it's so heavily measured. In a sense, the viewers make those decisions automatically because you watch what they're watching. We have ratings, we have all kinds of data, and we're measuring it all the time.
One last question. Did you have? Go ahead, Will.
As part of the hackathon, do you have 3D models of art pieces that you license out to people?
Thingiverse.com/Met. We've got about 37 objects that were photo scanned for the hackathon and have been they're uploaded to the site. They're all on Creative Commons share alike license, which means you can do whatever you want, but if you do something, you have to share it too. And based on those models, there's been lots of what they call derivatives, where people have taken those initial scans, which are just scans of the initial objects, and made new things and uploaded those to Thingiverse. So there's a Buddha head Pez dispenser. Someone took the Marsyas the flayed man and Lita and the swan and put Marsyas' head on the swan and made Lita the Marsyas. There's been all sorts of like reuses of these objects, which is exactly what we wanted to show. That is, if we do this work, that anybody can do. Any of you can come into the museum, scan stuff, and upload it to Thingiverse. It's dead easy. That people will take that and then do something else with it, and then people will do something else with that. And there's just no telling what's going. We had no way of knowing what was going to happen, and only by opening it up to this kind of participation, we found out all this amazing interest in aspects of our collection that were sort of hidden away.
Good. Well, with that, I was committed to say we would keep this to 1 hour exactly, and I think we did that. On behalf of the lecture series, I'd like to thank our 3 panelists for being here today. And again, a reminder, if you're around and available next Wednesday at the Times Center, we will be interviewing Rachel Howitt, who is the Chief Digital Officer of New York City. Thanks again for coming.